Hello everybody, my name is Mike Geig and welcome to another live Unity tutorial. Today we are picking up with part 2 of Merry Fragmas, which is our multiplayer first-person shooter game. Um, it would be very beneficial if you had watched yesterday's session, Merry Fragmas part 1. If you haven't, that's fine because we're going to be doing something completely different. We're going to be dealing networking today, but some familiarity with the project obviously beneficial. If you are watching this recorded, from our website, not live, then obviously watching the recorder is a good idea. So, hello everyone. Before I begin, as always, I will mention that if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, holiday wishes, whatever, follow us, message us on Twitter at Unity3D, at the Ant Ranch, at Will Goldstone, at Matt Mirrorfish, and at Mike Geig, which is um, as I mentioned yesterday, if you do have questions, don't just send us the question on Twitter. Create a forum post and send us the link in Twitter. That way, when we answer the question, the knowledge lives on for the next person who has a problem. All right. So today we're building off of, like I said before, what we did yesterday. Yesterday you saw I imported the asset, the Photon Unity network, but then I got this little window that just kept popping up, so I removed it. So the first thing, and something I kind of did behind the scenes, is I just re-imported the Photon Unity network from the asset store. So you saw how to do it yesterday. I'm not going to go over how to do it again. Just asset store, type in Photon, get Photon Unity network. Because the first time, or as soon as you import it, you get this little window here, and it just popping up. And this is where we register for an account. And like I said before, we're doing all free stuff. Uh, I'm using the free Photon plugin. I'm using the free cloud service, 20 concurrent users. Now, if you don't have an account, you just create one right here. Just type in your email and hit send, and Photon sets it all up for you automatically. It's free, it's fast, it takes like a second maybe. Now I already have one, so I'm just gonna go ahead and hit setup here. And the thing they send you an app ID here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and grab that, and I'm just gonna paste it in here. Now, normally you don't want people to be able to see your app ID, all right, because that's how games get hacked and people can do all sorts of wacky stuff. However, this one here is just for this particular training, and it's free one. I didn't pay for anything, but I don't care if you see. And I'm going to select my region, which is the US, because I'm at. Now you can host your own servers and stuff like that and whatnot, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to use the Photon provided one, and I'm going to hit save. And it's going to say, hey, we created all this stuff, and I'll just say cool, and I'll get out of there. So now we've got our Photon set up, and we're actually ready now to start with all of our networking stuff. Now, I do want to show you real quick here. This is what we left off with yesterday. So we've got our game, we're running around, we're able to shoot. You can see I shot that one guy there, we can aim, and all that, right? So that's where we finished yesterday. So today, we are going to build off of that, and we are going to network this whole thing. So we're going to be dealing with a cloud peer-based network. So a lot of people ask, is it peer-to-peer? Is it server-side? So we're going to be using the Photon Unity network, which does have a server. However, our connection base is peer-to-peer. So that comes with some ups and downs. So that comes with some pros and cons. The best thing about a peer-to-peer style network is even though we have a server, the server overhead is very minimum, and the processing and the bandwidth is split across all the different clients. And so it's a very robust, basically a peer-to-peer network without the server really having a lot of interference. The server's main responsibility is um, is simply facilitating the communication between the clients, as opposed to a server client-based network where all clients talk directly to the server. The server does a lot of heavy processing and talking back to the client. So, there's pros and cons to each approach. Um, we One of the questions here in chat, yes, there is a server, but the server is not really the one that's doing all of the maintenance and the overseeing. Instead, there's going to be one master client, and that's going to be like our own server, which is just one of the clients, though. If that client drops off, a new master client is found, and it just sort of goes that way. Real quick too, I had noticed yesterday that Twitch has a new feature where if you type the at sign and then someone's name, so at Unity Tech, before asking a question, it actually like highlights the name like brightly. So if you have a question for me, start the question by saying at Unity Tech and then ask your question. That way in chat, it'll be highlighted and it'll be really easy for me to pick it out amongst all of the rest of the chatter. So if you're just talking, fine, but if you have a chat, or if you have a question specifically for me, do at Unity Tech, and then it'll pop right up, and it'll be much easier for me to see it, and I'm more likely to answer your question. So, okay. So, coming back to talking about peer-to-peer networks, we got a little image here for you. So, we're dealing with a peer network, and so basically, we do have a server, and like I said before, the server just facilitates the communication between the clients, but the server doesn't really do any processing whatsoever. This means we can have lightweight servers, we can run our own server. Servers aren't really super responsible for doing a lot of stuff. Instead, the server redirects most queries to the master client, and the master client is responsible for maintaining state and making sure everyone's kind of talking to each other, and maybe dealing with things like deleting objects and stuff like that. And if if a master client leaves the game or whatever, then a new master client is. Normally, the master client is the first person to join a room. They become the master client, and everyone else just becomes a regular client. Um, but basically, that's the way this system. So the clients all talk to each other, and the server just sort of sits back, right? And that's basically what we're going to be doing. A couple of the questions. Oh yeah, so people are just testing out the at Unity Tech feature. So anyway, yeah, and then so most of the actual game communication happens in a room. Photon is a room-based system, so everyone can join a lobby, and then from the lobby they room. In the room is where the actual games take place, and the lobby is just people or picking a room or whatever. So let's look at how we make this. All right, and so I've already set up the Photon part there. You just saw me do that. I put in an app ID, and that is what's going to enable us to communicate to the server to begin with, and that's how the server is going to know that all of these different clients are using the same game or talking about the same. So a couple of things we're going to do. We're going to do a little bit of maintenance stuff first here. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create like a lobby camera. So a game camera that's just going to sit up here and look at the lobby while you're waiting to play the game. So I'm going to go ahead and just create a camera in my game. And that camera I will just position maybe something like that. I don't know. Just something that'll sit there and take a look at the game, something to look at while you're waiting. We'll do that, and for this I'm just gonna set the background black. Oh, that looks bad. Let me remember what the fog colors were. 36, 44, 105. So I'll make my background 36, 44, 105. Go. That looks better. So we have this camera that just sort of sits here. This is useful because while you're in the lobby or while you're waiting to spawn or you're waiting to respawn, you don't want a blank screen, right? So we some camera here. So, that's just a little first bit of maintenance there. The second is I want a stream, right, or a string, right, to show us what our connection state is. So like a connection string, we can do a GUI element or something like that, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to use the UI for this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize the canvas system. So I'm going to pop into 2D mode. You remember we added the canvas just to have this site reticule. That's all the canvas does right now. It just has this little dot on there. And so now I'm going to use it again. I'm going to add some text. So I'm going to go right click on the canvas, UI text. In this text element, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to manually type in my anchors. So I want it to be maybe 0.01 by 0.01, so lower left hand corner with a little bit of space. And then how far is it going to go? Let's do 0.2 and 0.1, something like that. Just a little block there for my my text to be. And then I could sit here and move text box there, but I'm just actually going to zero this out by typing zeros all in here, and that'll get that to all line up. sometimes it doesn't do exactly 0 depending on the pixels and whatnot, so it's going to get as close as 0 as it can. There we go. Inside here, I don't really want any text. I am going to keep it left aligned. I'm going to set it to the bottom there. Make its size something like 18. Make its color white. Go. And I will allow overflow, and then I'm just going to go ahead and erase the text there. The text only exists to contain my status, so when I don't have a status, I don't have any text. Just real simple UI stuff, right? So I got a little text box there now. And so let's come back to our game. Here we go. All right. And so now I've got that text in place, so that's just another bit of a maintenance item. The next thing, as someone had actually pointed out in chat earlier before we started, we currently can't see the player. We can see this floating candy cane, but that's about it. So tomorrow is when we're going to add like the model data so we can actually have something to shoot at. So today we're going to continue with this capsule and this candy cane because the networking is going to take some time. And actually, so someone else here in chat just said you forgot to put the sights on the gun layer. I didn't actually forget that. I actually forgot. Anyway, you'll see you'll see what the problem is. Second here. It was an oversight on my part, but not the oversight yours. But we'll take a look at that a little bit later. And so what I'm going to do is with the player selected, right, and it's just capsule and gun, we can see that the mesh renderer is currently disabled. That's the mesh renderer of this original capsule from the people that made the first-person controller. So it's disabled by default when we got it from the asset store. I'm going to turn it on. I'm just going to hit the checkbox there, and I'm going to click Use Probes. And so there we go. Now you can see the capsule. It's still not great. I mean, it's a floating capsule with a candy cane gun, but it's a step in the right direction for us. So we've got that there. And since this is a prefab, now I will hit Apply, which will save back to the original. So that's the next bit. So now we'll be able to see the capsules. It won't just be a floating candy. All right. And so next, what I need to do is I need some spawn points, right? I need some way spawn into the game because we're not going to leave this player here. Matter of fact, for a network game, we do not want the player in the scene to start because that means that every person will be playing with the same player, and that's a big no-no. I mean, that obviously won't work for many reasons. And so we need some way to determine where the player can, right? So we're gonna establish some spawn points. And so what I'm gonna do is I am going to go ahead and create a cube here. Just go create 3D object cube, and we'll just put that cube somewhere like, I don't know, here. We'll say this is one spawn spot. And with this cube here, I'm going to go ahead and rotate it so that it's pointing outward, because when we spawn there, we're going to face outward. Now, you'll notice I created a cube. I could just do an empty game object. I left this as a cube so we can visually see. In case we never need to move it, we can just say, oh, let's just move that around, right? So if you're wondering why I used the cube here as opposed to an empty game object or anything like that, this is just so we can see. We're actually going to make it so the cameras can't see. We don't really have to worry about that. Now, this is just a spawn point. So I don't need a collider, so we'll remove that. Now, I am going to leave the mesh renderer because we see it. However, to prevent other cameras from seeing this and for it to interfere with our game at all, I'm going to put it on its own layer and just tell the cameras not to look there. And so with the cube selected here, which I'm actually going to rename spawn point, I'm going to go ahead and create a layer for that. So I'll just layers drop down, and I'll create a layer called spawn point. Go, and we'll put our spawn point on that layer. There we go. So I have a spawn point here, and I'm going to place several of them around this. So I'm going to go ahead and go isometric view and align with that there. Go ahead and get ourselves like a map view here. And so I've got this spawn point. I'll duplicate that. Where do we want spawn point? How about in there's a spawn point. We'll put one in here and we'll rotate it to face that way. There's another spawn point. Put one here. Here. This is all just arbitrary. Right? Let's put one right over here. Rotate. Oh, let's face that way. And let's see. One more. Let's put it maybe room in the corner. I like that one. And actually, let's put one right over here, right out in the open, where everyone's gonna see him as soon as they join, and they're gonna die pretty quick. Yay, that's the bad one. Okay, so I have these spawn points now. Someone has mentioned in chat that the audio is going in and out. Is anyone else experiencing audio problems? Please let me know. But yeah, just so you're aware. Now, someone else had mentioned in chat here, I could just use gizmos. So we can see we have our cubes here. If you look in the inspector, I could use an icon for this to see the spawn point. I don't like doing that. The reason I don't like doing that is eventually you're going to have so many of those that are very cluttered. You can see the cubes just sort of blend in, right? These, however, are bright in orange, and they stay the same size no matter what. So at this point, they're kind of blocking everything, right? So I like the cubes. I think they're more subtle and they blend in. You can see where they are as far as positioning, but they're not obnoxious. So there's actually a reason I didn't use icons. I'm not particularly a fan. So now I have all my spawn points. I'm going to create a new empty game object, which I'm just going to call spawn points. And this is just going to be the parent object. Set that back to 0, 0, and put all the spawn points inside just to condense, keep things simpler there. Let's see. So people say that if audio is weird, refreshing the page fixes it. So if you're having audio issues, just go ahead and refresh the page. So now I have my spawn points here. So that's good. And they're on their own spawn point layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the first person player. I'm going to look for the camera, first person camera, and just say, hey, I don't want you to see the spawn point. No more spawn points. If I play, oh, still have that. The main camera up here. Let's see. Main camera up here, I want to give a depth of -2. I forgot to do that earlier. So the main camera that I added, the lobby camera, I want to have a very low depth, -2. We'll deal with turning that on and off here in a second, but for now, I don't want it there. And as you can see, I cannot see the spawn points. I don't run into them. They are non-intrusive in any way. So there we go. Spawn points. There we go. So we've made the player visible. We have added spawn points. We've added a lobby camera, right? Next, I want to make it so my first person, my player, basically, sorry, my mouse goes nuts every once in a while. There we go. We want the player to be able to be spawned in our game. And so it's a prefab already, which is what we want. It's got to be a prefab. But we also need something to make it work on a network. Now, Unity's built-in networking, we use something like a network view. But since we're using Photon, we're going to use something Photon specific. So what we want to do, since this is a networked object, something we want to sync across the multiple clients, the multiple instances, we are going to add to this a Photon view. So with the first person player selected, I'm going to click Add Component, and I'm going to go to Photon Networking and a Photon view. All I need to do is add that, and now it's capable of being networked. And I'm just going to hit Apply. I'm going to save my changes back to prefab object. Now that there's a Photon view on this, and I have applied that change, I'm going to delete it from my scene. All right, I don't want any in the scene to start. Photon is going to manage spawning them and keeping them all in. All right, so that's exactly what we need there. And so now what we want to do, so we have that out of the way, is we want to start actually getting ready to write our networking code. Oh, one more thing we need to do. Sorry, I forgot this. If we go into our prefabs, we have our first person player prefab here. But since it's not anywhere in any scene, if we build a Unity game, this will not be included. Unity will remove it, saying, hey, you're not using it. So we need to tell Unity that we still want this prefab to ship with our game, even though it's not in any scene. And to do that, we need to put it in a resources. Now, we could put a resources folder under assets, but basically any folder labeled resources anywhere in our project will suffice. I'll keep it right here inside the prefab folder. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it resources. And I'll put the first person player inside there. So we have prefabs and then a folder called resources, and it's inside there as well. All right. So now we have our player inside here. Oh, someone's saying, is it dark? I mean, I can turn off lighting. It doesn't look very good. Certainly do that if it's too dark otherwise. Whatever. So now our player's inside these resources. All right. Okay, and so now what we need to do is we're actually going to start our networking. So I'm going to create an empty game object. So just create empty. And I'm just going to call it network manager. And the sole responsibility of the network manager is, is to manage the network. All right. So just basically our scripts, our network scripts are going to go on this. So I don't really need it to be in any particular place. I'm just going to move it out of the way. And so let's go ahead and create our first script. So inside our scripts folder, I'm going to create a new script, C# script. I'm going to call it network manager. All right. So our network manager script here, and I'm just going to click and drag it onto the network manager game object. There we go. And let's go ahead and open it up. And let's talk a little bit about how we're going to manage our code here. And so let's zoom in here a bit. That's so the network manager's sole responsibility is going to be initializing the lobby, connecting to our game room, and then spawning our player, just making sure we maintain state. And this is where we'll put code to maybe give ourselves a username or choose the room or pick from all the rooms available or whatever we would do that would manage the network, right? And so what we're going to do is I am going to start by creating some fields that's going to manage our different things. So I'm going to start by creating serialized field, all right, which is the same as public, except it doesn't make it public, keeps it private, but makes it available in the editor. And this is going to be text, all right, and that text is going to be our connection text. Now, since we are using text, which is part of the new UI, at the top we do need to say using Unity engine.ui. That to work. We're also going to have serialized field, transform collection array called spawn points. There we go. And we're going to have a serialized field, and we're going to have a camera called scene camera. There we go. This way the network manager can turn off the camera when the player is spawned. That way we're not drawing the scene twice, which will kill us there. So there we go. So we've got our 3 variables there. And so the last thing I want some private variable, so game object, which is just going to maintain this game's player, right? So just keep track of that. Now inside the start method, this is where we're going to do our connection, all right? And so what we're going to do is, first off, I can just connect, but I'm going to tell Photon to use more verbose logging. If I don't do that, Photon could experience errors or events could happen, and it won't write it to the log because it won't clutter that up. But since I'm currently writing my networking logic, I really want to be able to see all of that stuff. So I'm going to say Photon network, which is the class that comes from using Photon stuff, Photon network.log level. So I'm saying, hey, what level do I want to log at, right? And I'm going to say Photon log level dot full. So I can say only show me information, only show me errors. Full is going to show me everything. This part is not required, but I'm doing it just so we get everything in the output. Okay. Next, I'm going to connect to the Photon server. And here's where I can specify IP addresses. Here's where I can, like if I have my own server, or I can specify a whole lot of different connection options. But since I did that part at the beginning where I typed in my app ID and saved all that, right? And I'm not using my own custom server. I'm using Photon server and whatnot. I don't need to do any of that stuff. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say Photon network, all right, dot connect using settings. All right, so just connect using the default settings with my app ID. And this is going to take a single string as an argument, and the string is what version am I on. Now this is entirely up to me how I want to handle my own versioning. I'm going to say that this is version 0.1, right? And the version is just important to keep people with different versions of a game from playing against each other, right? So only people with the same version will play against each other. And as I develop this game, I'll change this version number. And ideally, I'd save that in some configuration file or whatever. All right, but that is going to connect me to Photon, right? And so now I just want to see what that connection looks like. So I'm going to do some work here inside update. Update is where I'm going to use this text element when we add it to our canvas, just write whatever is happening, right? So I'm going to say connection text, all right, dot text, because that's not dot text, because that's the text property there, equals, and I'm going to say Photon network dot connection state detailed. My detailed connection state dot toString. There we go. So whatever is currently happening is going to be written to. Now, I understand that writing to a text element during update every single frame, even when nothing is changed, is inefficient. But again, we're going for simplicity. So this is just an inefficient call, but whatever, it's going to do the job. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop back over into Unity. All right, and I'm going to click on my network manager, and I can see that it has the space for spawn points, it has the space for my connection text, and the space for my screen camera. And so I'm just going to click and drag my camera, drop it on there. I'm going to click and drag my text onto the connection text. Now I want to put my spawn points on here, and I could just click and drag each one and drop it on there. But I don't really want to because I have a bunch of them. But you will notice that if I click on my network manager and then try to highlight all my spawn points, I lose my network manager. So here's a real quick workflow tip for you. I'm going to click my network manager, and in the upper left-hand or upper right-hand corner of the inspector, I'm just going to lock it by clicking that lock icon. And now I can click on other stuff, and you'll notice it doesn't change, right? It's still locked on my network manager. And now I'll just click and drag, add all of those there, and then I'll unlock. There we go. So there we go. So by the way, if you ever notice how no matter what you click on, it's always showing the same thing over here, you're probably locked. That's what that does. Here we go. Now it knows about all my spawn points and my camera, my connection text. I'm not really using most of this stuff yet, but it has it. It knows about it. Let's go ahead and run it. And you can see, all right, I've joined the lobby. So I've got my connection string down here. My console's got all the events that have happened. So joined lobby. Cool. So that's my current state. I'm in the lobby, but I'm not in a room, right? So I'm not able to play my game yet, right? Because I'm just in a lobby. I need to be in a room to actually play against. So how do we know when we're in a lobby? How do we know how to connect the room? Well, I'm going to tell you. And I'm also going to remove some of this commenting here. That's just space that I need. So we have our start. Our start's going to connect us. Update's just updating the string here. And so an event gets called when we join the lobby, right? And that event is void on joined lobby. So whenever we join the lobby, which we just saw we did, all right, this function is called if it exists. And we're going to say, okay, on join lobby, what do we do when we join a lobby? And this is where we could say, okay, tell me all of the rooms that are available, allow me to give myself a name, allow me to create a new room, whatever. We also have the ability to say, you know what, I don't really care about all that stuff. I just want to join any room, whatever room. I could say Photon network dot join random room, right? And that's going to put me in whatever room. Problem is if a room doesn't currently exist, this is going to cause an error, which is fine. I mean, we can catch that error and then have another function that, okay, we couldn't join a random room, let's create a random room and all that stuff. I don't really want to get into all that. The documentation covers that pretty specifically. I just want to create a room, right? I want to join a room or create one if it doesn't exist, all right? And so what I'm going to do is, in order to create a room if it doesn't currently exist, I need to specify some options. So there's a class called room options here. And so my room options, which I'm just going to call RO for options, equals new room options. And inside the constructor here, I need to specify some options. Not inside the constructor, right here. I need to specify some options. And so my options are going to be, first off, is visible. So can other people see and join my room if they don't know about it? And I'll say true. All right, I want people to join if they can. And then the second one is how many players? What's my maximum players? So I'm going to say max players, and I'm going to set this equal to 10. Now, I'm allowed 20 concurrent players at a time with the free Unity network, the Photon class, right? However, I'm going to limit it to 10 for right now because, one, I don't have that many spawn points, and two, this is just going to keep it nice and simple for now. have 20 players, which might be a bit much. Start. So those are my room options. It is visible, but only 10 people can join it. Now that I have my room options, I'm going to join the room or create the room if it doesn't exist. So I'm going to use the call Photon network dot join or create room. Join or create room. There we go. And so first off, I need to specify what the room's name is. Okay. And so, you know what? I'm just going to create a room called Mike. If Mike exists, we join it. If it doesn't, we create it. Next is my room options. So I'll just pass in RO, those options. And then finally, what type of lobby is it? So I'm just going to do typed lobby. And my typed lobby is default. So it's just going to be a default game room. Okay. So this is what happens now. When we join the lobby, we create a room if it doesn't exist, or we just join. So I'll come back to Unity, and I'll press play. And we'll see joined. Not joined lobby, but joined. That means we are in the room. We have joined the appropriate room. All right. Cool. So now we've joined a room. Let me check chat, because I see a lot of stuff on there. How does Network Manager subscribe to on-joined lobby? I'm not entirely certain how Photon does it, probably through reflection, but I haven't actually looked at how Photon does it. That's my assumption. 20 in a room or 20 in the whole network? Actually, I have no idea. Probably 20 in the whole network. 20 concurrent users is probably 20 people lobby and room, but that's only an assumption. I haven't actually looked. Let's see. And then the next question was the same thing. So I'm sure it says it on Photon's website. I just haven't looked. Okay, so now we've joined the lobby. Next we want to do is what do we do when we join the room, right? And that is where we create our player. Okay, and so what do we do when we join the room? We are going to start the spawning process. All right, and I'm actually going to work backwards. I'm actually going to use 3 functions to do this process. I could do it all in one, but I'm doing 3 so that later respawning is a lot simpler. All right, so I'm going to start with the last step, actually creating the, and I'm going to do this inside a coroutine. I'm going to say enumerator, right? Spawn player. That's the name of my coroutine, and it's going to receive a float respawn time. All right, and the very first thing this function is going to do is it's going to wait. So we're going to say yield return new wait 4 seconds. All right, and we are going to pass in respawn time. So when this coroutine starts, the first thing it's going to do is say, let's wait until time to respawn the player. That'll yield correctly. Once the appropriate amount of time has passed, so when we first start the game, the respawn time is 0. And then after we die the first time, maybe we'll say 3 seconds, or 10 seconds, or whatever. It's entirely up to us, right? So once we have waited the appropriate amount of time, we are going to determine one spawn point to spawn at. So I'm going to say int index equals random.range. There we go, 0, and then spawn points dot length. So it's going to find a random spawn point for me, and then we're actually going to create the player. Now, we are not going to say instantiate. Okay, normally we say instantiate. Instantiate this object, instantiate that. We could do that, but now we need to instantiate it not just on our machine, but on the same machine or on the same game across many clients. Everyone needs to know our player has been created and has joined the game, not just us, or else we're going to be out of sync, and that's not what we want. So we can't just instantiate it, right? We need to call a Photon instantiate it on the network. And so you remember we created a game object called player here, which is going to maintain that for us. I'm just going to say player equals Photon network dot instantiate. Now this is going to work very similarly to the regular instantiate, except it's going to instantiate it on all connected machines. So first off, it's going to say, hey, what's the name of the prefab we want to instantiate? And we named that FPS player. And we can only instantiate by name if it's in a resources folder, which we've already done. That's good. Next, we're going to say, hey, what's its position? So to do this, I'm going to go ahead and say spawn points sub index dot position. Go, and I'm kind of off screen now, so I will split this up here. Go. And then so it's going to say what's the rotation. So again, spawn points sub index dot rotation. Go. And then finally, what's its group? Because we can have objects in different groups. I'm just going to say 0 because all my objects can be in the same group. That's fine. And so this instantiates the player on the network, right, which is exactly what we want. So this is the coroutine that does that. We use a coroutine because we want it to wait, and we want to vary how we want it to wait and stuff like that. So that's we're kind of moving backwards. So this is the end goal: spawn the player. So a step before that, we are going to have a function called void start spawn process, and this one is also going to receive in a float respawn time right here. Okay, and so this function right here is responsible for starting this coroutine. And the reason we split this out into its own function is so when we join the game, we can have a different spawn time than when we respawn, and we can just have a lot of control because we can just call this function, which will then start this, right? So inside here, all we're going to do, so first thing we're going to do when we start the spawn process is we're going to say scene camera dot enabled equals true. We do this because when the player dies and they start the respawn process, in the meantime, we need the lobby camera. Otherwise, they're just looking at a blank screen. One of the questions came up, do we need this camera? No, but if we don't have this camera, we're just going to have a blank. We want something visible, right? And then what we're going to say is we're going to say start coroutine. The coroutine we're going to start is spawn player, the one we just created. And we're going to pass in how many seconds? Respawn time. So whenever the player needs to spawn initially, or the player dies and needs to respawn, we're going to call this start spawn process. What that's going to do is turn on the camera, and then it's going to go ahead and start this coroutine here. I did forget a part of this coroutine here. The last thing we want to do after we instantiate the player is we're going to say scene camera dot enabled equals false. This way we don't have the scene camera on while the player is playing the game, because then we're just drawing the entire scene for no reason. That's inefficient. So this just saves us that inefficiency. So whenever we need to spawn or respawn, we call the start spawn process, and that manages the routine. So now, working backwards, how do we start the spawn process? So we have a built-in function from Photon now called onJoinedRoom, right? So we know what we do when we join a lobby, we a room. So now what do we do when we join the room? We spawn the player. And so we're going to call our start spawn process. And for our initial spawning, we're just going to say 0 because we don't want to wait for our initial spawn, only for respawn. So we join the room, starts the process, starts the coroutine, which spawns our player. There's a lot of extra stuff. I could do all of this stuff right here inside joined room. I'm splitting it out now so that later I don't have to come back here and rewrite this. So you might wonder, man, that's really verbose. Why are we doing it this way? Later on, it's going to be much more. So that's why we're setting it up. And so let's go ahead and try this out. Okay, so I'm just going to come back to Unity here. Make sure I don't have any errors. I do not. I'm going to hit play. We're going to wait, and we joined the game. Great. And now here we are. Perfect. All right, so we're in the game now, and if I had other players, they'd be in the game too. All right, so perfect. That worked great. Okay, so we have this networked game now. All right, we're joining and instantiating on a network, but it's not just done there. There's a few extra things, obviously several extra things we're going to need. I have a question here. You instantiated a player. Does this mean we can do the same with AI enemies the same way as before by making a prefab and instantiating it? Oh, so here's the thing: is if I instantiate a prefab using the regular instantiate method, no one else will see it. Only I will see it, right? Anything that everyone needs to see, all your multiple players need to see, has to be instantiated on the network using Photon network.instantiate. If you just call regular instantiate, you'll see it, no one else will. So yeah, you don't use regular instantiate if it's something that everything needs. But things like special effects and whatnot, you can instantiate yourself. Okay, so let's try this out. I'm actually gonna build this, right? So let's go ahead. I'm gonna go to my build settings. That's all fine. I'm gonna select build and run. I'm gonna say, where do you want to save this? I'm gonna create a new folder called builds. And inside, I'll call it PCFS. Let's build this. And we're gonna run it. You can't test multiple instances in the editor, so you have to build one and then run one in the editor. So fine. Graphics simple is fine with me. So here we go. So here's my game. It's connected and it's on the network. All right. So let me just come over here. Actually, I'm just going to move this one off the screen here. And let's play our game. All right. And actually, before I play the game as well, I'm going to bring my game view over here. And in my scene view, right, I'm just going to kind of, oops, hit the window. Not at all. There we go. I'm going to move here so I can see. All right. And so now I'm going to hit play. And what I'm going to see is I have 2 players right now. If you can look in the hierarchy, hit the escape key. There we go. I have 1 player, which is right here. And I have another player, which is right here. So 2 players, right? So we got 2 players. Good to go. So my game over here, still in there, right? However, it's not that simple. We got 2 players. And you can see, I can actually see the gun of the other player right there. And let's go over to where that player is. You realize, wait a minute, it's not possible that the other player is there. It's all the way outside my game. Well, where is that player? And I turn around and look. There he is again. Over here this time. This disembodied floating candy cane. There he is. Oh, wait a minute, there he is. What's happening, right? I don't have 3 players. You might be thinking, oh man, there's a problem there. Oh yeah, as someone else also noted it in chat, there's 3 audio listeners right now. We'll fix that too, because it's going to go nuts about that. But what's happening? Well, first off, the reason I can see the other player's gun on top of everything else is because it's on the gun layer. And my gun camera puts whatever on the gun layer on top of everything else. So it makes sense that I can see their gun. Also, you'll notice when I turn, they turn. Right? Also, you'll notice that it looks like there's 2 of them, but there's not. Right? And they move when I move. So a lot of things are going on here. So first off, like I mentioned before, the gun of your enemies are still on the gun layer and being drawn on top. So we're going to need to resolve that. The second thing is the player that I'm seeing is not necessarily the player that I am, because I have 2 first-person players in here. Both of them have cameras that are have the same depth. So Unity is going to pick randomly one of those. And so on both of my games, I'm seeing the same thing. We're both just one of these cameras, right? And the last thing we need to resolve, when I move, they move. Because right now, both of them are players. Both of them have scripts on them that says, when I move, move, right? And so this is no good. Finally, they're jumping around like that because even though they are in the game is not syncing their state. So my game, my client right here knows there's another player, but it has no idea where that other player is. And so it's just sort of throwing it places. Saying, no, it's maybe over here, or maybe it's over there, right? And so I'm getting these effects. So we need to resolve all of these issues. And they're pretty significant. The solution is pretty simple, though, all right? Basically, what I need is all of the people that aren't me. In my game, all of the other players need to just be dummies, right? They need to not really have their own logic to them, okay? They need to just be visual components with nothing else to it, right? Only my player is the one with all the scripts on it, right? And then you go over to your buddy's house, only his player is the one with all the scripts on it, and everyone else there is just a visual, right? And so that's what we're talking about. We need basically my player to be the only real player and everyone else just to be a placeholder. And that's what we're going to fix. And so I have this other instance here. I'll go ahead and close that. And so that fix is what we're going to work on now. And it's as someone said in chat, it's a bit funky, right? It's a bit strange. So how do we fix this? Okay? And so what we need to do is we need to manage what is currently enabled and what is currently not enabled. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by bringing the first person prefab back into my scene, dropping it right there. All right, and I'm going to leave this come on down. In its position when it don't matter, we're going to delete it again when we're done. We just bring it in the scene so we can edit it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all of the special stuff about this. I'm not going to remove it. I'm sorry. I'm just going to disable it. So I'm cool with it having a collider. It should. I want to mesh render, rigid body. That's fine. This first person character script, remove it. Or disable it. I'm sorry. Just disable it. Double mouse, disable. First person head bob, disable. Photon view, leave on. That one's super important. So this is just visual stuff with a photon view. Okay. So then we'll expand it here, and I will say head joint doesn't do anything special, so we'll leave that. First person camera, we don't want its camera, so remove it. We do not want its audio listener, so goodbye audio listener. We do not want its simple mouse rotator, so goodbye. Okay, all disabled. Gun camera, okay, gun camera, we're going to go ahead and disable this. Audio listener is already disabled. Player shooting script, or disable that. Handy cane we're going to put back on the default layer. Okay, put it on the default layer there. And then we're going to come through here. This doesn't do anything else specific, so that's the sights don't do anything special, so we'll do that. And muzzle flash already has a script and whatnot disabled, so we that's yep. So good. So it's now generic. I'm just going to go ahead and hit apply, and that's going to save all of that stuff back to the prefab. So we've removed all scripts, we've removed all behavioral components, we removed cameras, audio listeners, we put everything on the default layer. So yeah, real kind of boring, right? It's exactly what we want. It's a dummy. It doesn't do anything. And so now that that is applied and saved, I'm going to go ahead and delete it from my scene. All my changes are now down here. And what I'm going to do is on my player, I'm just going to turn that stuff on, right? Other players don't get that stuff, but my player gets that stuff, all right? And so now, right, want to send something in chats. Nope, never mind. Good there. So now what I need to do is I need a script that's going to turn this back on for my player only, right? So every instance of the game will see that I'm spawned in, right? And they'll see the player appear. However, only on my client will I get functionality. And so I'm going to go into my scripts folder, and I'm going to create a new C# script, which I'm going to call player network mover. And this script is going to manage a lot of the network stuff. And I'll go to my first person player here, and I'm just going to add the script. So I'm going to go add components, scripts. Forgot there's going to be so much stuff in here. Player network mover, and there we go. And I just want that to be on the prefab here. And so let's go back to the script here, and let's open it up, and let's see what it does. So someone in chat asked, can't you have two prefabs? No, you can't have two prefabs, because how would you know which one to spawn, right? If you spawn the prefab with all that stuff on it, everyone gets the prefab with all that stuff on it, and thus everyone has the same problem we just had. If you spawn the prefab without that stuff on it, everyone gets the prefab without that stuff on it, and you don't get to play because you don't have any stuff on it, right? You need to have one prefab that's the same, and you just need to enable the parts on your component, your piece, right? Two prefabs will not work. I'm not going to say that. Two prefabs might work, but this is actually much easier than managing that. So inside here, we have our stuff that we don't need. We have just our basic script here. And so what I want to do is I'm going to say, if this player is my player, not someone else's player, but mine, enable all this stuff. All right. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to do this inside the start method. But how do I know if this is my player or if this is someone else's player, right? How do I know? So Photon has something called is mine, but it's only available to something that's not a mono behavior, but a special behavior part of Photon. So Photon has a class called Photon.mono behavior. And it's pretty much exactly the same as a mono behavior, except I now know some networking stuff inside here. So instead of just mono behavior, Photon.mono behavior. And so inside my start method, what I'm going to say is I'm going to say if Photon view dot is mine. So This does that. There we go. So if this is my player and not someone else's player that just happened to be instantiated on my machine because they called a photon.instantiate, right? If this is my player, what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable all of that stuff I previously disabled, right? And so what I'm going to do in this, just a bit of a tedious step here, I'm just going to go through and manage that. So first thing, I'm going to say get component. All right, and the first thing I need to enable is my first person character script. So first person character dot enabled equals true. And I'm actually going to template it. So then we'll say the next one we got to do is going to be first person head bob dot enable true. Right, so we're just going to go through, and this is the part where mishmashing all of this stuff is kind of going to come back to bite us, because I'm using assets from one place, assets from another, my own assets. If I was really making this, I would really consolidate a lot of these scripts, and I'd really consolidate a lot of these pieces. But since I've got just all over the place, I'm going to have to do a lot, right? But that's really what happens because we're doing fast prototyping, right? That's kind of the nature. And so now, oops. I lost my copy there by wrong button. We'll paste this here, and so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do get component simple mouse rotator. All right, and we'll say dot enable true. Go, and then we're going to say get component in children, right? Because there is no, and what we're going to do is a player shooting script. There is no player shooting script on the parent object. It's in the children, so we'll get component in children. All right, so there we go there. And so now what we're going to do is we are going to loop through the children and look for any other mouse rotators and enable those. So I'm going to say for each, all right, for each simple mouse rotator, ROT, in get components. This time we're doing components, not component, because we want multiple. Get components in children. All right, and we're looking for simple mouse rotator. Let me here. We're just going to loop through all of the children, and we're going to look for simple mouse rotators. And if they exist, we are going to enable them. Then we're going to do the same thing for cameras. Simple mouse rotator. This time we're going to do camera, cam in get components in children, camera. Cam.enabled equals true. So it's a lot of stuff, right? Someone said, why not just remove them? Because it's easier to enable them on one object than remove them from 20, right? And then this gets simpler. Let's just read in chat here. Yeah. Okay. So just people are talking in chat about this method of doing it. So there are a lot of reasons multiple prefabs won't work the way you think they're going to work. Just trust me on this one. All right. I don't really have a time to go into all the reasons why that's not quite going to do what you want. And so this enables all of that stuff. All right. And the last thing I want to do is I want to put the gun layer back, or put the gun back on the appropriate layer. And this one's a bit weird as well. So what I'm going to do, I need to find that object in the children, right? So I'm going to do transform dot find, right? And to speed up this process, I'm not just going to look across all objects. I'm actually going to type in a path, right? Which I'm just going to copy paste to cheat for time. So what I'm doing is I'm saying transform.find, and I'm going to specify the path to get to the object I'm looking for. This way, it's a faster function. So I know that it's going to be under head joint, under first person camera, under gun camera, and its name is candy cane. So I'm looking for the candy cane object. And once I find that, I'm going to say dot game object dot layer. And we'll remember that layer was layer number 11. That's our gun layer. Now normally, this is really ugly. Normally, if I had time, I'd really make this look better, but I don't. I don't have any time. So we're going fast. We're prototyping. It's like a game jam, right? So things are going to look a little ugly. Basically, this puts the gun or the candy cane back on the gun layer. This is also why the sights were on the wrong layer, because I'd have to do this one more time for the sights, and that's and so I would have to do this one more time for the sites, but I'm not going to bother right now. Okay, so there we go. So here is the script. It's a long script. Well, not really long. It's just a lot of tedium, which is going to enable all that stuff. Like I said before, normally you would consolidate a lot of this stuff. You wouldn't need to do so much, but basically we turn off all interactive stuff on the prefabs, and then here we turn it all back on just for us, right, and no one else, right? And so this is exactly going to give us what we want it to be. Right? And so now let's go ahead and try this time. So I'm just going to come back to Unity. I'm going to click on my first person player, make sure all that stuff is disabled, scroll down, make sure it has the network mover on it. It does. Let's try this out. I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to go ahead and build this. Second here. I'm going to build it, and I'm going to move it off screen for a second while it connects, and I'm going to connect here. Perfect. Now, I don't see a floating candy cane anywhere. I actually have no idea where the other is. I gotta go find them. So there's somewhere. One of these rooms. I forgot to turn my scene view back in. There you are. Okay. You'll notice I'm moving, but they are not. That is important. Okay? I'm moving, they're not moving. I can shoot them, that doesn't do anything just yet. There they are. And if I come to the other game, right? One thing we're gonna notice now, I'm in this room. Where's the other player? We don't see him, right? When we move, they don't move on the screen. So we've resolved the issues that we've had of the controls controlling both players and the gun appearing as a ghost gun and whatnot. But the problem is now is that we know about both players, right? We know they're in our game, but we're not syncing any data between the clients. The clients don't update positions. Okay? And so that's the next thing we need to fix. We need to tell Photon, hey, we need to update this the position of our stuff. And there's a crude way to do it, and there's a better way. Let's see. So does isMind just check the game object that owns the script is instantiated from your machine? Yes. Ismind, so photonview.ismind determines, hey, where did this object come from? Like we know it came. The server told us to instantiate it everywhere. But who owns it? And isMind says, I own it, or says, do I own it, right? Okay, so here's the real crude way to fix this. If I click on my first person player and I scroll down to the Photon view, I know it has an observed component. What is it syncing across the network? Right now, it's not syncing anything. What if I simply sync the transform across? On scroll. There we go. Now what I'm saying is, you know what? Observe the transform across the server or the clients. Let's build this again. Need some elevator music. Okay. There we go. There's that. Move it off to the side. And come here and press play. Again, I forgot to zoom out, so I don't know where the player is. Gotta find him. They're hiding. There they are. Okay. And so look what we have, right? We've got them right there. And we can see that we have a bug. Because, oh, someone else is playing the game. We're using the app ID, and I posted a link to it previously. So someone else not here, part of this video right now, is playing this game. That's not... Whoops. Okay, well, let's fix that real quick. Network Manager. We are now in version 2. So whoever was playing that game, you've been immortalized in a video. Yeah, I posted a link to the completed version earlier, and I forgot they're using the same app ID, right? And since I'm using the same app ID and I was using the same version, that was someone from the internet. I'm like it's moving. Why is it moving? Okay, and so there we go. Now I'm joined in with that one. Let me zoom out here. Hopefully I can here, hit play. Go. All right. Where is the other one? Is, oh, up in that room. I see him. I'm going to get you. Okay. So there they are. Okay, so let's see what happens. Here's that player, and it sees it there, and I move it, and I move it, right? However, notice how jittery it is. The reason it's jittery is I'm simply telling it the transform data over the network, right? And so it's basically just teleporting around as it gets updated. All right, and since the transform data isn't updated all that fast because it is over the network, right? It's got to send it over the internet. It's a very crude way of handling that. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to fake some. All right, so this is the better way. What we're going to do is we are going to go back to our network mover script, right? The network mover script is responsible for smoothly maintaining this motion. Okay? And so what I'm going to do is I am going to add some variables. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to determine what it is I want to sync. So I'm going to say vector3, and I want to sync the position. Okay, so vector3 position. I want to sync the quaternion rotation, right? And I need some value. This one I'm not syncing. This is just for movement, smoothing. So how much we're going to smooth the movement. The more smoothing we have, the more unresponsive it's going to be, or the more slow it's going to move. The better our smoothing, the more realistic it's going to, or not realistic, more accurate it's going to be, but the more jumpy it's going to be. So we'll go with 10. 10 seems to be. And so now what I'm going to do is inside my start here, we have, hey, is this mine? Turn all this stuff on. But what if it's not mine, right? What if this player is someone else's player? If it's someone else's player, we're gonna start a coroutine. Start coroutine, and the coroutine we're gonna start is called update data. This does not exist yet. We're about to write it, but we're saying, okay, this isn't mine, so start updating the data based on the network. Right? So let's write this coroutine. It's gonna be an I enumerator, and it's gonna be called update data. By the way, in case you haven't noticed, we're gonna be going on times. Sorry about that. Okay, so here we go. I enumerator update data. And so now what I'm going to do inside here is I'm going to manage lerping or smoothly moving from my current position to the one I'm supposed to have. And so I know a lot of people cringe when I do this, but I'm going to start with while true. I know people love that. I'm a big fan. While true, so we're going to build in an infinite loop because we want this to run forever and it stops. So while true, and we're going to say our transform.position is going to equal vector3 dot lerp, not left, but dot lerp. And we're going to smoothly move from where we currently are to where we want to be. And so we're going to say transform dot position is where we currently are. Where do we want to be? Well, we want to be at the vector3 position top of our class. And how? Ooh, no. There we go. And we're going to do time dot delta time times smoothing to get there. So your standard lerp, I'll copy this, paste again. The next one we're going to say transform.rotation. And it's not going to be a vector3 lerp, it's going to be a quaternion lerp. Okay? And we're going to lerp between transform.rotation and the value rotation. Okay. So this, every frame is going to smoothly move the dummy player, the one without these scripts, from where it currently is to where it should be based on the. And the last thing we're going to do in here is we are going to say yield return null, which is just going to bounce us out of this coroutine. And then next frame is going to come back and do the same thing. Every frame, it's just going to lerp us around where we need. All right. Let's see. One of the questions, what about syncing bullets? We'll get there. We're not there yet. Okay, so we'll start this coroutine. Now, every frame it's moving towards this position in this rotation. But what is this position in rotation? Right? Have this. What is this data? And this is what we're going to get from the network. We're going to sync to the network and get it from the network. Right? And so the way we do this is we use a function that Photon calls. And that function is void Photon, or I'm sorry, on Photon serialize view. This function is called to serialize data across the net. And what it does is it reads in a couple things. So the first thing it reads in is a Photon stream, which we just call stream. And it reads in a Photon message info, which we just call info. All right. So this is how we sync data between. This is where we write the data that we want to go in between all of the clients. So I want every client to know what the position and the rotation of these objects are. So inside here, I'm going to say, hey, am I currently reading the stream or am I writing to the stream? Right? Because it goes two ways. We'll say if, right, if stream dot is writing. So this is me writing my data to the stream. So if we are writing, I'm going to say stream dot send next, and this is where I put into the stream whatever it is I want to have. So I'm going to put in my transform dot position. So I'm just writing it to the stream, and then I'm going to send to the stream dot send next transform dot rotation. So I want to send to all the clients, hey, this is where I currently am, this is my position, and this is my rotation. Okay. Now, if we're not writing to the stream, that means we're reading from the stream. So if we're reading from the stream, we're going to update the position of all of the players. So we're going to say position equal, and we're going to say, okay, this is a vector 3 I'm about to pull out, so we got to cast vector 3, then we say stream dot receive next. All right, we're going to do it for our position there, and we're going to do it for our rotation. We have to write in the same order that we read. We did position, then rotations. We do position, then rotation. And here, this one's going to be a quaternion. And so now we say stream dot receive next again. So there we go. Right? It's a lot of text, but basically we're saying, hey, every frame, write to the network what our position and rotation is, and every frame read in what the position and the rotation of everything else is. Right? So everything that's not mine, read in its position and rotation and update it so it moves around appropriately. And that's going to smooth things out for us in most regards. We're going to look at one more issue. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to click on my first person player. And I'm going to scroll down to my Photon view. Now it still is observing my transform. I don't want it to observe my transform anymore. I want it to observe my player network. Okay? So now let's try this out here. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to build this. Second. Someone asked in chat, is the smoothing principle less accurate or more accurate? Smoothing is going to make it less accurate. It's a trade-off. You can either make the player move smoothly, or you can make the player be exactly where they are. So the more you move towards one, the less obviously the other. So you either have to be more smooth, or you have to be more accurate. But you're going to notice you can do smoothing and make it look all right, and still be pretty accurate. The very nature of networking. So they're up there again. So let's go to them. There they are. Okay. So I'm going to switch over to the other game. And look how much smoother that runs. Obviously a slight delay. Also, their gun can clip through. We can deal with that, but whatever. Slight delay, but it looks much smoother, and it's fairly accurate. One thing we will notice is the jitter here, and that's because the object has a rigid body with gravity on it, so we can fix that really. Wanted to show you. Mostly, this smooths it out and makes it better. So let's go ahead and stop it here. Stop bringing it here. The one quick way to fix that is we'll just click on FPS player here. For the rigid body, we'll uncheck use gravity. And then real quick here in the is mine, we'll just turn that back on. Say rigid body dot use gravity equals true. So we only use gravity on the one our player is. All the rest of them are just going to be updated using the. That fixes that. Okay. So now we are moving around, and that is completely synced. If I had 30 people in here, 30 people would be synced and good to go. Obviously, I'm not going to, because my room is 10, but you get the idea. Okay, and so now what we're going to do is we're going to shoot. All right, And so there's a couple different ways we can handle this. First and foremost, again, I want to point out that our shooting is really an invisible raycast from the center. We're not actually throwing a bullet out. So the actual shooting effect is just a visual effect, and that's all it is. It's a trick, right? Makes the player think they're shooting from their gun, but they're not. If we really wanted to throw an actual bullet, we could either do what we do here, where we photon dot instantiate an actual bullet and have it move around the game in the network. But more realistically, what we'd probably do is just spawn it locally on our client and not really worry about the other players being able to see it, because how often are you really going to see a bullet, right? And so if you need the bullet for your own visual styling in the game, great, but that's not really something you need to sync over the net. And we really want to keep our traffic over the network as light as possible, right? Because it's got to send over the network to all clients. You really, don't want to be too heavy with. So, okay, and so what we're going to do now is we are going to have the shooting in it. And we are going to not use something like the Photon view to manage this. We're going to use something called an RPC, a remote procedure call. And what an RPC does is when I call an RPC, it calls on my machine and calls on every other machine simultaneously. This way, all machines call the same function at the same time, and we can keep it all in sync, right? And so what we're going to do is I am going to go through this process of making this work. So on my player network mover, right, which is just where I'm going to put this code since we already have it, the next thing I'm going to have is I'm going to have a float health. And I'll set that equal to something like 100, right? So this is the health of my player. Now, this is something that it would work if I don't sync it, but I really should sync it. If I don't sync my health, right, the way this is going to work is if someone walks up and shoots me 4 times, because guns are going to do 25 points, shoots me 4 times, I'll die. So it'll look like it's working correctly. But if it's not synced, let's say someone walks up and shoots me 3 times, and then someone else walks up and shoots me 3 times, I'll still be alive. And someone else walks up and shoots me 3 times, I'll still be alive, right? So what I need to do is every time I take damage, I need to let everyone know that I took. And so I'm going to say float health equals 100F. And then here inside the serialization, right, I'm going to say stream.send next. And this time I'm going to send my health. And for this other one, I'm going to say health equals float. And inside here, we'll say stream.receive next. There we go. And so, again, all data that I want everyone to share just gets written and read from the stream. Let's create our RPC now. So we're going to have an RPC here called getShot. So we're going to call a public function, public void getShot. And getShot is going to receive the amount of damage we take. Now, this is an RPC, remote procedure call. I need this to be able to be called on everything. So I need to give it a tag called RPC. This has to be here. This is a C# attribute. Saying this function is a remote procedure call. It will get synchronized across the network. All right? So here we go. RPC, right? And so inside here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say health minus equals damage. So we're just going to take damage. And then I'm going to say if my health, right? So if health is less than or equal to 0, right? I've died. So if health is less than or equal to 0, die. And I could just do destroy game object, but I'm not going to. Because if I call destroy game object, so just destroy game object, right, it's going to destroy me on my game, but not on anyone else's. Okay? I need to not just destroy it, I need to remove it from the network. And so I can't just say destroy, all right? I need to say photon network dot destroy. That will destroy it and remove it from the network. Now there's one more problem here, and the problem is this. Every time I shoot someone and they die, every client is going to attempt to remove the player from the network, right? Because every client calls this function. That's no good, right? I don't want, because basically the first client that calls it is going to remove it from the network, and the next one that calls it is going to have an error because they tried to remove something that's already gone, right? So I don't want everyone to be able to destroy stuff. That's bad anyway. Why would we want everyone to be able to remove something? Instead, I'm going to say if my health is less than 0 and photon view dot is mine. So only I can remove myself from. So it only happens one time. Only the owner, like, so everyone realizes that someone took damage, but only the owner is going to say, oh, did I die? Allow me to remove myself from. All right. One of the questions is on Photon serialized view called each frame? I'm actually not sure. I'm not sure how often that simulates. Probably as fast as it can, but I don't know if it's variable. I don't know if it's fixed. The documentation would probably have that. All right. Okay. So we only remove something if it's ours. Okay. So there we go. And that's the whole RPC. So let's look at how we actually call this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my player shooting script here. Scripts, player shooting script. This is where we actually shoot. And you'll remember yesterday we did the part where we said, hey, if what we hit is the enemy, kill it. So that's what we did there. We just sort of shorthanded that. Let's fix this now. So let's say, hey, is what we hit a player. We're no longer shooting enemies. And we're not going to do this line anymore. So instead, what we're going to do is, hey, we shot a player. What do we want to do about that? And so what we're going to do is we are going to say hit dot transform. All right, so let's get the transform of the thing that we hit, which is the player, dot get component. And we are going to get the player network mover. So player network mover script. So I hit a player. Give me that player's network mover script. And I am going to call on it, right? I am going to call on it the RPC function, right? And I'm sorry, I typed in the wrong thing here completely. We're not going to get component player network mover. Sorry about that. We're going to get component photon view, which is syncing the player network mover. So sorry. So we're going to get the photon view of that player, and we're going to say RPC. I want to remote procedure call the photon view. And what are we going to call? We are going to call the function getShot. And who is going to receive this notification, right? Who do we want to tell that we shot a player? Well, I want to tell everybody, right? So tell all people that I shot that player, right? And then I'm going to pass in any variables that I need. And in this instance, I need a variable called damage. How much damage am I doing? Which we don't have yet. So let me just come to the top here. And let's just say float damage equals 25. There we go. So when we shoot someone, where's that, right? We're going to get their photon view, RPC on it, remote procedure call on it. We're going to call the function getShot, send that data to everybody, and tell it how much damage. So here's what's really cool about this. All right. What's really cool about this is we are going to call this on what we shot and tell everybody, but we don't need to say who we shot, right? I don't need to be like, everyone, I shot Brian, right? I'm just going to say I'm just going to call the function on this player, and everyone already knows, oh, he shot Brian, right? And so it's automatically synced up, right? So that's really awesome. I don't need to specify. It just knows because it knows I called it on this photon view, right? So there we go. So now, after 4 shots, the player that I shoot should die. It should be removed from the game. And if we come back to the network manager, right, what's going to happen is we've disabled the camera. So what's going to happen is it's going to be nothing right now. When they're removed from the game, their screen's going to go blank. Or just show us the last frame. It's going to look like it froze. It's going to be one or the other. Let's go ahead and save this. Go ahead and build. Let's see here. One of the questions in chat, would a single ampersand work here since both are required? The double ampersand stops the first is true, right? Short circuit. Yeah, so we don't want a single ampersand. We want a double ampersand. So the way that if statement is written is correct. We definitely want to have the short circuit. All right. So let me hit play here. All right. There I am in that hallway. Let me pull up the other button. Plus, no, right are. All right, so let's, oops, what's gonna happen? Where's my mouse? There's my mouse. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, goodbye, sweet prince. Shot him and killed him. All right, so it disappeared from my screen, and we can see disappeared from Unity. I had 2 instances of this running, one would just drop away. So I shot them, I killed them, they were removed from the game. They're still connected to the lobby, or they're still connected to the game room as well. So we could respawn them, but since the camera went away, nothing right. So it works, right? Perfect. So the RPC manages that code for us. We shoot them, they die. Okay? So that is the last thing I want to handle. I'm way over time. Last thing I want to handle today, so we can get right into the good stuff tomorrow with more of the beautification in UI and stuff, is I want to have respawning, right? So we can just keep playing the game. All right, and so what I'm going to do here is I've written my code in such a way that this is actually going to be fairly simple, right? So I am going to go to my player network mover here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a delegate and event system. So if you're not familiar with delegates and events, we have great videos on it on our website, unity3d.com/learn. Just check out intermediate scripting. But that's effectively what we're doing. We're creating a delegate event system. That way, the player network mover can tell the network manager when it's dead, and that removes the ability to have a lot of junk. One of the questions is, wasn't he supposed to switch back to the lobby camera? If you look at the flow of logic, not right now. The flow of logic says we join the room, start the spawn process, we turn the camera on, and then we spawn the player and it turns the camera off. But so far, we don't come back to here. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to fix it so it comes back to here, and the camera gets turned back on. Okay? So let's create our event and delegates. Right? So up at the top here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say public delegates. All right, and my delegate is going to be void respawn. Okay, and that's going to receive a float time. You also might wonder why I'm doing an event when I can just do a delegate. Events have better security. They're the way you really should be doing things across classes. The public event respawn, which is the type of my delegate, right? And we'll give it a name, respawn me. Okay, so this is our event, which is just a wrapper for our delegate. All right, our delegate actually, yeah, we'll leave that. And inside our method here, when we die, right? Not only are we just going to die, we are going to say if respawn me does not equal null. So if there is an event registered, right, call it respawn me. And we're going to see exactly how this is going to work. So this doesn't do anything just yet. But what's going to happen is our network's manager is going to basically subscribe to this event. So when the player dies, it knows automatically to respawn the player. Right? So if respawn me does not equal null, something subscribed. Oh, and we need to specify how quickly. For 3 seconds. So if anything's subscribed, after 3 seconds, we call the respawn me event, which is the public version of the delegate, which is going to be our code. I know it's kind of complicated, but just trust me on this one, and if you're curious about those, go check them out. Okay, and so now back in the network manager, we need to say, hey, let us know whenever the player dies. Hey, player, tell us when you die. Okay, and so the way we're going to do that is after we instantiate our player on the network, we are going to say player.getComponent, all right, and we're going to look for the player movement script, what I was looking at earlier when I made a mistake, our player network mover, dot respawn me. Respawn me is the name of that event. Okay, respawn me, and let's subscribe to it. We do that by saying plus equal, and we're going to add a function to it. What function do we want to be called whenever respawn me is called? And that function is start spawn process, which is why we separated it out. So now, whenever the player kills itself, whenever the player dies, right, on the network, it's going to call respawn me, which we've subscribed to. So which means it's going to call our start spawn process. Okay? Right there. And then our camera. Okay? So let's see now. So that's what we've done. Go ahead and try it out. Here. Scene, even though we didn't change anything here. Build this. Go. Elevator music. Okay. Play. There's that version there. Version here. Oh, we spawned at the same spot, so I just shot them up into the air. Whoops. There we go. Okay. So here we are. There they are. 1, 2, 3, 4. They die. Go back to the lobby camera. And there they go. They respawn. Now they're... Where are they? I don't know this. Kind of cheap. There they are. Hello. Oh. Goodbye again. Doing a weird jitter thing on my player in the lobby camera, and I have a feeling that's because we spawned in the same spawn point and kind of went nuts there. Yeah. Otherwise, it's behaving very strangely. Very weird. But you can see on the other player, all this stuff is still disabled. That's peculiar. I think that's just a bug because that's the first time I've seen that happen. At any rate, we can see that respawning works now. So basically, the way this works is our movement is handled through the Photon view. The player that is the object that's you has all of your scripts and everything enabled. Every object that's not you is just a dummy object, and we lerp or smooth that movement across the network. All shooting is done with an RPC. When I call that remote procedure call, all game players know about it, and they all get hit. Okay. And then finally, we use events and delegates to have the network manager know when the player dies and respawn them. Okay, so that's kind of in summary of what we've done here today. Now, I am going to go ahead and post a link in chat, right? In case anyone wants to play. All right, so that's the link to the game that we've made so far. And I'm going to go ahead and load this up here. And let's see how it plays. Hopefully there aren't so many people in it already that in. It does only allow 10 people. That's going to pretty much wrap it up for today, by the way. So if you have questions, post them inside chat there, and I will answer them. Otherwise, we can see the labors of our work here. Kind of a slow load. There we go. Let's see if anyone else is in the game. We'll be working on adding the ability to have a name and know who you're shooting and who's in the game and stuff like that. That's tomorrow. So tomorrow is where we make this prettier, where we add model information to this, animations, and UI stuff. And hopefully we have time for all of that. We're going to do as much as we can. We may have to schedule a spillover day if we can, but we'll see. But oh, there's someone. And I shot them. So whoever you were, you just died. Yeah. See who else is it? There's a bunch of people. You're dead. Hey guys, you're all dead. Eats. Alright. Ah ha ha. I play a lot of first person. Sorry. Oh, they got me. Alright, I can see everyone else playing while I'm waiting to respawn. And we could add a timer so you can see how close you are to respawning. But yeah, I mean, it's a crude first-person shooter, definitely. But it was, what, 2 hours of work so far? So yeah, ooh, and a bunch of people just spawned in the exact same spot. So we all got shot straight up into the air. Now where did you go? So you definitely need some code to say, hey, if someone's already at that spawn point, maybe we'll say if you spawn on top of someone else, you kill them, right? Like, so don't hang out on spawn points. Or something, I don't know. But, so yeah, so tomorrow we are adding animations. We are going to add UI elements to allow us to join specific rooms and know who's playing, know who we shot, who we are, all that stuff. But anyway. They're all cheating because I'm talking while they're all able to concentrate. Anyway, okay. Alright, I'm going to stop playing now. Stop this here. But, okay, so, like I said before, please post your questions in chat. Using @UnityTech makes it pretty easy to find it. Let's see. So yeah, the version I posted has music and stuff on it, which we didn't cover in here. It's just simple. I just added some camera, right? But yeah, just to make it a little bit more festive. Let's see here. Will we get this code? Yeah, I mean, I will post the code, but probably not for a couple days. I'll get the videos posted, but I gotta format the code and stuff, and that takes time, and I just don't. I'm joking. It does take time. I will get it posted. Which is the reason I didn't post the source yesterday and I didn't post the code. It's just I don't have it yet. It's not done yet and formatted. Um, but eventually I will post the source. But if you want it before then you're gonna have to make it. And I know that's mean, but typing it you'll learn way more than just copying and pasting anyway. So do that. Let's see. The class continue after 3 days. I don't know. We're gonna try to get everything done tomorrow. Let's see how that goes. I don't have anything scheduled. Um, let's see. Error when full. Can we handle that? Yeah, we can certainly try that. It's a little hard for me to test because I can't create like 10 servers or 10 clients and whatnot. But we'll see what we have time for. A lot of the bells and whistles and polish stuff, it's really kind of your game specific anyway. So we're not really gonna cover a lot. Let's see. Will you be adding some sort of recoil tomorrow? I'm not sure what you mean by recoil. Like, so if you get hit, you get pushed back? Because we can make that part of the RPC. So basically, if is mine, right? Photon view dot is mine. Just like push back. So add force negative of vector 3 dot forward, right? And that'll just kind of push you back when you get hit. Yeah, I don't know that we could do that. When is Unity 5? When Unity 5? Eventually, soon, someday. Let's. It's harder to post the code. Why not upload it as a Unity package? The reason I want to upload it as a Unity package, Feriota, is because I don't want to distribute other people's assets because they didn't give me permission to, and I don't want to start doing that. B, I don't have any means of doing that. I don't have we don't have a Unity share for sharing with the public that I have access to. And if it ever moved, then the links would be wrong and stuff like that. So it's much better just to post the code on the page itself as opposed to trying to get you files for their location. I don't know who's going to host it, and if it ever gets moved, you won't find any stuff like that. That's why we don't currently. Plus, I don't want to give away other people's stuff. Should have to go to the asset store and get it from them. That way, if they ever update it. Can we add a zombie? I'm sure we can. I'm not sure we will. I don't think we have time for that. Good. Okay. Oh, so apparently there's a camper. So yeah, that'll happen. It would be cool too. Maybe we'll add a way to join and observe mode. I don't know. Will you go over other game modes such as capture the flag and domination? No. Not because I don't want to, but just because there's no way there's time for that. Yeah, just use your imagination. If you know how to shoot, just kind of write some game logic to manage the. Let's see. Cool. All right. I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's any other questions, so I guess we'll wrap up there. Thank you all very much for participating and watching today. Hopefully it was good. I will get the video posted as soon as I can, hopefully tonight or tomorrow. And again, any questions, any comments, anything like that, please feel free to follow us at Unity3D, at the Ant Ranch, at Wool Goldstone, at Matt Mirrorfish, or at Mike Geig, which is me. I even said my own last name wrong there, at Mike Geig, which is me. Again, if you're going to ask us a question, instead create a forum post, send us the link to the forum post, that way our knowledge lives on. And anything else, just feel free to stop in and say hi. But thank you all very much. And I will see you all tomorrow. Have a very fragment.